Ka tika mimihi atu ki a Ngāti Toa, arā te awa whānui, kei tēnei peka o te motu. O tiranga ma te huhua o te wā, haere mai haere, kia tātou katoa e huitahi mai nei, tēnā tātou katoa. Thank you to the United Nations Association of New Zealand for the opportunity to contribute to this year's conference theme of Building Back Better. I'm sorry I couldn't be there in person today. COVID-19 has taught us that we can use technology in ways to remain connected as we learn from each other and seek out collaboration. The world we live in at the moment is full of complex global challenges: climate change, conflict, inequality and poverty. The last two exasperated by a global pandemic. Nations have focused on domestic responses, and so have we. In doing so, we've put people at the centre of our response. That has been science and evidence-based to ensure that we have a more resilient economic recovery. The pandemic has also exacerbated other global challenges. Humanitarian crises have been made worse. Increased instability has led to heightened civil unrest and conflict in some regions, and more than 114 million people have been pushed into extreme poverty. At the same time, we face the urgent and unprecedented impacts of climate and environmental crisis, and we are experiencing increasing and fast evolving global security risks, such as transnational crime, cyber threats and artificial intelligence. As an island state in Aotearoa, New Zealand, we are acutely aware of our physical separation from the world at this time of COVID. The compounding impact of COVID will change how states and economies tackle their economic recovery and their contribution to a cohesive set of international rules and norms. I believe that post-COVID, we will need to look at our long-held commitment to international rules and norms and regional architecture and consider whether they are fit for purpose or require further modernisation for this time. What the world needs now is a commitment towards empathy, sustainability and intergenerational solutions for well-being. New Zealand has a prime opportunity to call on the bicultural values that have characterised who we are as a people and a country that continues to assert its independent foreign policy. Values such as manaakitanga, kindness or the reciprocity of goodwill. Whanaungatanga, our connectedness or shared sense of humanity. Kaitiakitanga, stewards of our intergenerational environmental well-being. And mahitahi and kotahitanga, working for the collective benefit and shared aspirations of all. Each of these values, when expressed in a relationship, gives the sense that everything's connected and purposeful. These also align to the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs, which we have tasked ourselves with implementing. An urgent call for action to end global poverty while we decrease inequality, improve health and education, spur economic growth, tackle climate change and work to preserve oceans and forests. The SDGs as a common set of goals can work as our blueprint for the future we want to shape. What is needed is for the global community to refresh our joint commitment to these goals. I say refresh because the pandemic has changed the context for how we implement SDG objectives. For example, ending COVID-19 and working together to ensure we are better prepared for future pandemic-like responses is linked to SDG 3, good health and well-being. Strengthening our global health and security will protect and progress all the SDGs. Right now, equitable access to COVID-19 vaccines is vital to global recovery, and New Zealand is actively contributing to this cause. We are contributing to accelerated distribution of COVID-19 vaccines via the COVAX facility. In collaboration with Australia and other partners, we're providing direct support to Pacific Island countries for the provision and rollout of safe and effective COVID-19 vaccines. We're engaged in discussions in the WTO and Asia-Pacific Economic Community to remove trade-related barriers to vaccine supply. And we are and will remain a vocal advocate globally for equitable access to vaccines. We're committed to playing an active role in the global efforts to strengthen the international system for pandemic preparedness and response. This includes actively engaging in relevant global work streams, including those focused on developing a new pandemic treaty or convention, improving the system of global surveillance, validation and early response for pandemics, and strengthening the WHO, recognising its critical importance in responding and preventing global health emergencies. Building back better also means building back fairer, creating meaningful progress towards the SDGs of no poverty, gender equality, and reduced inequalities. COVID-19 has had a disproportionate impact on the world's most vulnerable groups, on women and girls, on Indigenous peoples and minorities, and on persons with disabilities. New Zealand's committed to doing our part to ensure the recovery from COVID-19 respects and promotes the human rights and needs of all. We can draw on the Treaty of Waitangi as a foundation to establish a more inclusive approach to Indigenous issues, being a feature of our foreign policy. This will see economic, social, environmental and cultural benefits to countries willing to step up to this opportunity. It also creates a framework for our multilateral approach in the ever-increasing complexities of geostrategic politics. Internationally, we work hard to promote and protect human rights, including through the UN and in regional and bilateral engagements, and through funding projects through our ODA, focused on progressing human rights. We focus on gender equality, disability rights, sexual orientation and gender identity, the death penalty, Indigenous rights and democratic freedoms, including the freedom of expression and assembly. As a global community, we need to ensure as we build back better that we respect and promote the human rights and needs of all. And we must do more to create a fairer and more equal future. Regionally, we're firmly connected, culturally, linguistically and geographically, to and in the Pacific. Our whanaungatanga to Polynesia extends to the significant Pacifica diaspora communities who now call Aotearoa home. Our strength and success as a region to build back better relies on kotahitanga and a commitment to working together. As we support the region to build back better, we must operate within our Pacific context, and this means we'll work to strengthen multilateral architecture across the Pacific to support Pacific ambitions. We'll support each island nation's ambition to chart their own recovery and development pathway in conjunction with our common commitment to the SDGs. The SDGs will remain a shared horizon for our work in the region to help us prioritise the huge global agenda based on issues that matter most for our region. And we'll continue to provide official development assistance to our Pacific partners in a way that supports Pacific priorities and respects the mana and integrity of their decision making. Our relationship, connection and approach to partnering the Pacific towards meeting their resilience challenges will, I believe, signal a new respect for the inherent mana that we share towards the Pacific. This brings me towards strengthened relationships and partnerships. SDG 17, Partnerships for the Goals, embodies this objective. Without effective global institutions and multilateralism, we will not achieve global solutions for these critical global challenges. As we work to uphold critical elements of the international rules-based system like the UN Charter, international trade law, and international instruments such as UNCLOS, we assert a common set of tikanga or norms that should prevail in the region. These tikanga underpin the peace, security, and prosperity we seek alongside our kaitiakitanga aspirations for New Zealand and the Pacific. A well-functioning multilateral system should seek out common values to find practical, credible solutions that strengthen our systems and institutions in a way that can be supported globally. I sense that COVID-19, its impacts and geostrategic competition will urge new conversations on this front, and I certainly welcome the opportunity to refine those values that characterise who we are and what we uphold for the collective peace and prosperity of the region. Our strength and success as a global community relies on nations acting together. New Zealand's engagement in and contribution to Building Back Better will support a collective approach through the framework of the SDGs and leverage off our own experiences under Te Tiriti o Waitangi of standing stronger together. Multilateralism sits within the broader context of regional architecture and our desire for stability, peace, prosperity, universal human rights, and advocating for open and transparent democracy. We have an opportunity to build back better in the face of COVID-19, to recognise and respond to global challenges with global solutions, and to create a safer, greener, fairer and more peaceful world. Ki te kotahi te kākaho ka whati, ki te kāpuia e kore e whati. If a reed stands alone, it can be broken. If it is bound together, it is unbreakable, unwavering. When we stand alone, we are vulnerable, but together we are able to achieve much. Nō reira, kei ngā iti, kei ngā rahi, e tōpu mai nei, tēnā koutou katoa.